IGN just released a preview for Clair Obscur, a turn-based RPG that I'm extremely excited about. It's one of the only really big ones coming out this year, so let's take a look at what they had to say about it.
Years
Let's
ago, a
go.
mentor told me that the most important part of any story is surprise. A few years later, a writer I deeply respect wrote that perhaps the difference between good and great writing is technique, though even that was probably not as important as conviction. But what keeps us invested in a story is curiosity, the gap between what we know and what we need to know, the questions that drive us. Combine all three, and you tend to create something special. Each and every one of us has played a game that grabbed us from the jump, that connected with us in some unexpected way, a game that surprised us, whose belief...
And this is what I feel like turn-based RPGs always really do well, is the storytelling. Now, this one has a lot of atmosphere, has a lot of emotion, you can tell just by even like the small snippets that we do see. I think this will be a fantastic story, but you know, again, I feel like turn-based RPGs seem to always have like some of the best stories in my opinion. I don't know why.
was obvious from the first frame that made us want to explore. I have played a lot of video games, friends, and that feeling is increasingly rare for me, especially in the AAA space. So when I tell you that Clair Obscur, Expedition 33, grabbed me by the throat from the jump and didn't let go for a single second of the 3.5-hour demo I played twice, believe me when I tell you, that's some powerful magic.
Expeditioners, we do not take for granted that you dedicate your final year of life to keeping hope alive for all of Lumiere.
If you're unfamiliar, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 has a pretty fascinating setup. See, there's this being called the Paintress, and every year she paints a new number. When she does, every person of that age dies. Poof, vanishes, turns to dust. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. And the thing is, she's counting down. Every year, the people dying get younger, so every year the people of Lumiere send a volunteer expedition of people with 1 year left to live on a desperate, impossible, doomed mission to go to the continent across the sea and kill the Paintress, so she can never paint death again.
When you battle the Paintress, know that Lumiere...
I also like the idea of like an older cast, because I feel like a lot of JRPGs like to do the younger cast, which is totally fine, but I like a game where you actually play a little bit older of characters. Personally, I prefer, you know, either way is fine as long as the story's good, but I like the idea that we're already somewhat, you know, mature cast that is coming to terms and having to fight for their survival, essentially. I think it's a really cool idea.
It's with you.
You'll find journals from Expedition 84, so if you can do the math in your head, you'll get how desperate this whole thing is and how young, but still older than the average RPG protagonist, your characters are.
Learn from the ones who came before.
And lay the trail for the ones who come after.
Things get weirder once your crew lands on the continent. They almost immediately run into an old man who nearly dispatches the whole expedition single-handedly. You play as Gustav, one of the survivors, traumatized and alone, walking through countless...
That is some JRPT shit right there, though. You show up, first boss just annihilates you. Elden Ring, all of that. Always fun to do, and it gives a good setup for the characters. I just hope that some of the encounters really push you. From what I've seen, the combat actually looked challenging, but hopefully gets into that.
From other expeditions and his own. He's about to shoot himself when he's found by Lune, another member of the expedition.
You do that, we both die.
She's not blind to reality. They're probably both going to die, but expedition members swear an oath.
When one falls, we continue.
As long as one of them stands, their fight isn't over. Lune and Gustav clearly care about one another, but they don't always get along. When they find an unsigned message indicating another member of Expedition 33, Mael, might still be alive, Gustav wants to drop everything and try to save her, and then get out of Dodge. Lune is worried that the whole thing is a trap. Expedition members are always supposed to sign their messages.
We have to go.
No. Not yet.
At one point, later on, Lune asks Gustav if he's a coward because he just wants to get Mael and get out. He's not. He's just dealing with watching almost everyone he knows die. And Lune, she's the one that said they should land on that beach.
So it does have like emotional depth. Like, why should we keep engaging? Like, let's just enjoy the life we have. Like, it doesn't seem worth it. I want to at least live for the time I have.
In the first place. Neither one of them has it easy. These characters are adults, and they're written like it.
Come on, we always said the future of Lumiere is more important than any
individual life, yes.
Do you still believe that?
They don't always agree, they're dealing with guilt and loss and trauma, and they're not always kind to one another in the heat of the moment. But they care about each other, and at the end of that exchange, once they've called...
Thank you! This is what we need all the time, okay? We need some butting heads, we need some conflict, we need some emotional depth to the character. Not every game needs this, but when we do need these type of games that do push the boundaries of, like, what is acceptable, and just exploring, like, the human condition, you know, to some degree, you know, dealing with grief and the loss of something that intense is gonna psychologically fuck you. So, I mean, I do like that. I just like the concept. I really like it. I think everything looks pretty solid.
Down, they share a laugh.
The mission. Really?
Compelling characters are complex and flawed, and Expedition 33 seems to understand that.
Sorry.
Even if they weren't, Expedition 33 could probably skate by on the world. My demo was fairly linear.
Yeah,
there were branching paths with hidden grapple points, platforming, goodies, and secrets to find, and tough optional bosses to take on, but this isn't an open world game.
Yeah, I read there was a ton of optional content, tons of it. So we're in for such a good treat. I just really like the animation, the art style. It just looks so interesting, so different. Very unique to
and
itself.
It's better for it. Expedition 33 reminds me of Final Fantasy X. These environments may be linear, but they're gorgeous, whether you're standing atop a hill looking at the indigo tree, or both underwater and somehow not.
I used to hate linear paths, and, you know, to some degree, if done badly, it's obviously not good. I do like semi-linear now. I don't mind that, where it's like, there are some branching paths, you can still get to the point, but there's still some explore options. So as long as they have that, which this is going to say it has plenty of, then that's totally fine. As long as you are, you know, there's a lot of meaning and work between each things. I feel like a lot of problems with the open world shit that we're getting recently is so much of it's just empty plains of nothing, and we're so conditioned to want this open world stuff that it actually feels like, though you get more, you're actually getting less. A lot less design, a lot less intent behind what you're seeing. And it's cool to see, like, I kind of why I'm starting to now prefer going back and having, like, linear, where it's like, or semi-linear, where you have these open spaces with optional things to do that are within that you can kind of just explore in a smaller field and still enjoy it. And just have enough of that, and maybe a couple secret areas too, you know, small dungeons here and there. I would actually somewhat kind of prefer that. There are games that obviously benefit from it. You know, like certain games could obviously, when you think of open world right now, Monster Hunter right now kind of went the open world route-ish. I wouldn't say it's completely open world, but it's very large maps, and that one benefits from that type of feature because of how big the worlds are. But it's like, it's not even really, I don't know if that's really open world per se. I don't know. Yeah, amazing. Totally good option for this. I do like the idea. I do like, because you can tell there's a lot of creativity being put into every single one of these maps, which is really sick.
Expedition 33 is a visual feast, and I stopped in every environment I entered to marvel at the beauty and composition on display.
Yeah, look
There's
at
even
that.
a world map you
Look at that
entered to
whale.
marvel at the beauty and composition on display.
So amazing, bro. Oh my god, this is fucking crazy, dude. Every minute of it. And I'm not soying out for the camera. Maybe a little bit, but it does unironically just look amazing. Every second.
There's even a world map you traverse to get from place to place, like the RPGs of old.
This will be useful.
What really
this
hooked
art
me, however,
style.
was the combat. Clair Obscur may be turn-based, but it's not a DVD menu. There's a lot of depth here.
It reminds
character
me of, I just can't put my finger on it.
It's
But
a melee and ranged attack, the
this
latter of
looks
which
so
must be aimed manually. Melee attacks build AP, and ranged attacks spend it. You'll also need AP for skills, unique attacks that each character has in their arsenal. And on top of that, each character has a particular attribute. Gustav can use certain skills to build up stacks of overcharge, which he can spend to cash out for a devastating attack. Lune's spells grant elemental stains that can supercharge her other spells for additional effects and damage.
Okay,
My
so we got
favorite,
stack.
Mael,
A little bit more in depth, modifiers, things like that. Obviously,
Rescuer.
good.
This isn't a spoiler. She's in Clair Obscur's trailers. Can switch between 3 different stances, offering both
Say that again one more time?
effects and damage. And my favorite, Mael, you do rescue her. This isn't a spoiler. She's in Clair Obscur's trailers. Can switch between 3 different stances, offering buffs to attack, AP generation, and defense. Managing your AP, setting up a big combo, and planning ahead matters. Like FF10, the turn order is displayed on the left side of the screen, so you can plan every turn in advance, but strategy is only half the battle.
Yeah, these gothic monsters just look so unique. They're not like the generic purplish monsters or generic like demon monsters. These actually took a lot of design. I really like it.
The other half is moment-to-moment execution. You don't just choose an option and wait for a canned animation to play out. When an enemy attacks you, you can dodge, parry, or jump to avoid it. Dodging avoids attacks, while parrying nets you a potentially huge counterattack and awards AP, but has a tighter window. Sometimes the only way out is to jump over something.
So it's like reaction.
Sure, you can
turn-based.
engage in the time-honored tradition of blocking with your face, but the harder fights are going to force you to engage with these defensive mechanics. And if you parry an attack that hits your whole squad, all of them strike back in a beautifully choreographed counterattack that never
Oh,
gets
that's
old.
so sick!
Early on, I ran into a very powerful enemy who could kill my characters in a single hit, but the thing was, he had to hit me. If I could parry him, I could win. It took me a couple tries on my first run. He had a tricky attack that forced me
Yeah,
to
that's what I like
parry-
to hear. Couple of tries took you some some error, and especially because this is supposed to be you're on an expedition to save the planet, and there are animals and are beasts in here that are proven to be the reason why they can't stop this person. So you want some difficulty. And especially if you got wiped out by the first boss, you want to feel like desperation. That's personally what I think would add on to this type of game. I'm not saying every RPG needs to be super difficult, but I feel like this one definitely could benefit from having at least a moderate difficulty. So I'm glad that they're not skipping away. That you'll be essentially sent to the graveyard every once in a while. Really cool. I think that's it.
Or dodge
Again, big
twice
win.
in a row. But once I figured out I could parry the first hit and dodge the second,
Good.
dodge twice. Couple tries on my first run. He had a tricky attack that forced me to parry or dodge twice in a row, but once I figured out I could parry the first hit and dodge the second, I managed to take him down. Then there's the back-end stuff called Pictos and Luminas. You can equip up to 3 Pictos to any character, which provides buffs, like shooting this enemy might light them on fire, or attacks do more damage, or killing an enemy grants more AP, as well as stat upgrades. Win enough battles with a Picto equipped, and you can have everyone else equip its effects, minus the stat bonuses. And this is where you can do some really degenerate stuff. Sure, Mael has a skill that puts her in Virtuose stance, where she does 200% damage, if she uses it while an enemy is burning. Normally, you'd have to have somebody use another skill to set this up, but what if you gave Gustav and Lune a Lumina that means their ranged attacks are likely to set enemies on fire?
Ah, okay, so you got setups.
Or maybe you equip a Picto that cranks up your base attack damage, or that awards more AP for nailing a parry, allowing you to stay on the offensive longer than you'd normally be able to. Then you're cooking with gas.
So there's scaling in this where you can keep building up different attacks. It sounds like obviously a lot of combat depth, which you need for turn-based. You want the combat depth. You want the difficulty a little bit, at least moderate, to kind of be in there. That's pretty cool. I like that. At least optionally, I feel like. Yeah. This is sick,
Combine
though.
all of that, and battles offer a lot of interesting choices. If someone's low on health, do you spend an item or AP to bring them back up? Or do you bet it all on dodging or parrying the next attack? How do you level up your characters? Who gets what skill as a Picto so they can stack the right stats and they don't have to spend Lumina points to get that effect? And on it goes. And through it all, Expedition 33 is constantly finding new ways to make itself interesting. What's a gestural, and why is Lune obsessed with them? Who is the Paintress, and what does she want? Why is the world the way that it is? Are all these beings actually hostile? Some of them seem pretty friendly, and you have the option to fight them or leave them alone. What's the deal with that old man? How does any of this stuff work? In my demo, Clair Obscur...
I should say not turn-based RPGs the best stories, but RPGs in general. I just feel like give out the best stories. I want to clarify that.
Obscure Expedition 33 didn't stop to explain itself, and I appreciated that. It trusted me to figure things out, and I was more invested in what was going on as a result. Most importantly, I could never predict what would happen next. By the time "Thank you for playing" came up on my screen at the end of my demo, I was thoroughly hooked.
I'm excited about that.
On my second run-through, I found even more hidden areas, and laid the smackdown in one of the optional fights that had flummoxed me the first time around. When my time with Clair Obscur Expedition 33 was up, I wasn't ready to stop. I wanted to fight more battles, learn more about the world, and spend more time with these characters. Sandfall Interactive is a new studio, but you'd never know this was their first game from playing it. Surprise, conviction, curiosity.
This is taking me back. I don't know
Clair
why,
Obscur...
but even like that small thing took me back to like some PS2 era shit. Have anybody played Shadow Hearts that watches this? Please tell me below. Huge fan, and I heard they're making a possible sequel because they got some Kickstarter money. But this just reminded me of some old PS2 JRPG turn-based games I used to play, and man, those used to be Legend of Legaia, dude. I'm sorry, but yeah, even those small movements, like the engaging of it, very reminiscent of that, and just remind me of good old JRPGs. Like, look at this setup, like, you know, getting the stances ready, the flip,
conviction, curiosity.
Super cool.
Clair Obscur Expedition 33 nails all three. It had my interest before I played it. Now it has my undivided attention. If Sandfall can stick the landing, they'll have put together something remarkable.
Hell yeah,
for more,
man.
Check out our recent previews of Jump Ship and Neighbors, Suburban Warfare. And for everything else in gaming, keep it here at IGN.
Crazy looking monster. Absolutely stoked on this. I can't wait for it personally. I think we're in for a treat. I'm willing to bet it'll be good. He was hooked on it, so I had this feeling all along, and it sounds like I was right, okay? The prophet speaks once again. I'm just kidding. If you guys have any JRPGs you grew up with that you kind of want to talk about, you know, or if you knew any of the ones I talked about, please reference it below. Hope you guys have a good night. Thank you for watching, and take it easy.